So you've heard me talk about Steve Jobs. He said, the storyteller sets the vision, the values, and the agenda for an entire generation yet to come. And when you hear those last 7 words, for an entire generation yet to come, you realize that it's not about you. It's about something bigger than you. When you lock into this something bigger than you literally creates a bigger magnet for you, which attracts the sorts of things that we want to have happen in the business.
Okay, I am joined here by Paul. This is a podcast that we've been trying to do for over 100 years, I believe. And I finally said, look, let's just do it on Zoom. And Paul said, why? I'm in Singapore. And I was expecting you to be in Japan or Australia or somewhere else. So fantastic. Thank you very much for coming. The reason that I am doing this and the reason I want to have Paul on here, Paul has been a mentor and inspiration to me for many, many years. And also has been working with a dear friend of mine and his wife, Masami, on the B1G1 program, which he's going to explain to us in a minute. It's been doing for 15 years or no, actually 18 years. But why I think this is really, really important, because as entrepreneurs or investors or board members or members of Get Launched and building your own networks of people, understanding this piece that we're going to be talking about today, understanding philanthropy, understanding the why behind what you're building is super, super critical. And it doesn't really get talked about nearly as much as all the other things that get talked about. And hopefully what you'll see at the end of this is how you can integrate this into what you're doing and hopefully get better results as a result of that. So
sounds like a plan.
It does sound like a plan, doesn't it? It's worked for me, so hopefully it'll work for others as well. Look, I guess the key thing that I remember when I was first starting out as an entrepreneur, kind of trying to get my head around, was why do all these people spend their entire careers trying to build wealth and then get to the end of that career and give it all away? So could you start with the big picture philanthropy, why and what, and then we'll kind of drill down to how people can build today.
Yeah, sure. And you're right. It used to be, you get all this and then you give it all away. And so when we took a look at that, or when Masami particularly took a look at that, it didn't seem to make that much sense, because there was this one big thing down the end. But why not have lots of little things in the middle of all of that and do it on a consistent basis, so that instead of waiting to, create this legacy, you're actually living it every day.
Yeah. Okay. So then one of the things that I kind of learned through B1G1 is obviously it's very enjoyable. It's to be using your wealth in a way that can create more impact for people that don't have the opportunities that you have. So how has that philosophy kind of shaped B1G1 and maybe then sort of lead into what B1G1 is?
Well, I'm not sure with our audience today, by the way, thank you for joining us as well. I think that I used to express it this way, and I think it's still the same way, that people are doing very, very well, or the people who are doing very, very well. I think that there's a moment in time when they go home and they put their head on the pillow and they go, is that all there is? Is that all there is? And the answer is that it's not. There are now things that you can do, literally integrating them into the business. For example, Callum mentioned we're on Zoom right now. So you could be saying every time someone joins me on Zoom, this thing over here happens. And so you can set up these when this, then this is. And so it means that what you're doing during the day, you mentioned the joyful thing, that what you're doing during the day is joyful because you know that you're making some impact somewhere.
So I give the example that I do, and we've done many different things over the years, but the one sort of consistently just ticks away in the background for me is every time somebody writes a review of one of my books on Amazon, I donate books to schools in developing countries through B1G1. Why do you think that is more emotional or powerful or relevant to people than the kind of traditional teething, I'm going to give 10% to charity type concept?
Well, it is, first of all, because there is an outcome. I think everything is about outcomes. And in meetings that we have, there's outcome. Everything, we've got to be not input focused, but outcome focused. And so all of a sudden, when you wrap it the way you were just talking about with the Google reviews, there is an outcome. And what's also interesting, by the way, is that if you can track those outcomes, in our case, tracking the impacts, then what you can actually do is something that sounds really bizarre, but that is instead of having, or maybe not instead of, but in conjunction with a financial plan, you can also have an impact plan. And the impact plan, of course, for your team members is much more significant than, hey, guess what? We just made, $1 million. How much better is it if, actually, 1,000 people just got access to water, as a for example.
Okay, so that's all nice on the warm and fuzzy inside.
It is, isn't it?
Stuff, yeah. But for entrepreneurs, investors, board members, people trying to build networks, there's obviously a focus on growth and on building. Yeah. So how does giving stuff away actually help growth in your experience?
Well, I think there's two areas perhaps we can think of right now. If you, for example, if we look at the team members that you work with, as a, for example, there is a Gallup study, which, by the way, got updated today. But anyway, there's a Gallup study that says if you imagine 100 people in a company and you pop them in a boat just for making the percentages easier, and let's say you got 100 people in the boat, you're here on the tiller and the boat's heading that way, hopefully what you want to see is everybody doing that. In actual fact, what the numbers say is only 26% are doing that. The other 64, or not the other, so they're rowing the right way.
Right direction.
The other 65, or not the other, 65% of them simply have their oars in the water, meaning turning up 9 through 5, that sort of thing. And interestingly, the other 12 are rowing the other way. And of course, their audience is this way, or these group here. So what you find is this. When you start to do something which has real meaning and real connection, well, first of all, you will attract better kind of team members. Second of all, because the team members are playing a part in this, then it significantly changes that engagement thing. In fact, I was just talking just this morning with someone who said, if ever I left this company, and then they do very well, this company, if ever I left this company, I would look back on my greatest achievement being when we introduced this concept to the team 3 years ago. So it has an impact there, but it also has an impact in terms of, if you look at what, for example, are 3 things that every business person listening to us now wants to do. Well, first of all, they want to create great clients and they want to keep them. Second of all, they want to create great team members and they want to keep them. And thirdly, they want to charge what they're really worth. It turns out, from the non-heartstrings point of view, that when you do those 3 things, we're adding meaning to it. It changes every one of those dynamics.
Okay. So the original sort of idea Masami had was in a restaurant in Australia, buy a meal and a child in a developing country gets a meal. And a lot of your clients have that sort of customer folk. I mean, there's a lot we're talking about team, but also on the customer focused side. So customer gets the feeling that they're doing well or they're helping in some way.
Yeah.
How has that sort of manifested itself, and does the warm and fuzzy actually equate to numbers?
It does. It really does. And there's, again, lots of studies that verify that. But here's the thing. I think whatever business it is that we're in, and wherever we are in that business, whether we're directors, whether we're team members, whether we're owners or whatever, every single one of us wants to feel great about what we do. Another way of thinking about it is, if you're involved in shaping an organization, then what else do you want to do? You want to create something to which people feel like they belong. And if you can unlock that belonging, then a whole lot of dynamics and measurements change, right? For example, churn goes down and so on and so forth, right? So yeah, it is, you're quite right that there is this heartstring thing that, in my case, gives me a lump in the throat when I think about today, for example. I think it's 369 million impacts that have been created. And that's not meant to sort of go, B1, G1. It's because the heroes of that are the people like you who are members of B1, G1, making that happen consistently on a day-to-day basis. And the other important thing is this too. Every single one of us in business, well, hopefully every single one of us has some big ideas about where we want to head. And so sometimes what entrepreneurs think is, one day I'll wait until I'm quote unquote successful.
Yeah.
And of course, you've probably noticed that doesn't actually come. So in that sense, then they miss out on this, being able to make a contribution, being able to make the world a better place, being able to make their families better places, and so on and so forth. And by the way, in the families, there are some amazing things that happen in families just because the owners, for example, of the business are in B1G1, and the kids really get it. The kids really get it. And the fact that the kids really get it is, of course, great for us thinking forward. And I think that, so you've heard me talk about Steve Jobs before, where he said it this way. He said, the storyteller, and that's what businesses do. We basically create and tell stories. So he said, the storyteller sets the vision, the values, and the agenda for an entire generation yet to come. And when you hear those last 7 words, for an entire generation yet to come, you realize that it's not about you. It's about something bigger than you. And so what happens is when you lock into this something bigger than you, it literally creates a bigger magnet for you, which attracts the sorts of things that we want to have happen in the business.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I remember one of the B1G1 events that I attended in Bali. My kids still remember very fondly releasing turtles into the sea.
Well, I had a B1G1 member. Is serious. This is the first time I've had a chance to talk about it publicly, but this B1G1 member said, by the way, Paul, have I told you what I do with my kids? And I said, what do you do? And she said, well, there are 2 teenage boys. And no one's ever asked me this question before. She said, do you know what 2 teenage boys do when they go to the toilet? And I thought, well, that's a really strange question. And she said, well, let me put it this way.
Podcast.
Yeah, no, it's family podcast. She said, well, what happens is first of all, they all take their phones, right, with them. Second of all, they seem to spend a little longer than ever than you'd imagine. So what she literally has on the wall is a little QR code, seriously, which says, we need to celebrate how lucky we are for actually being able to sit here, because there are 1 billion people who can't sit on what you're sitting on right now. Yes. So the least you can do is scan that QR code and make something great happen here. Seriously. So it's stunning.
I'm sure Jack Sim would be...
yeah, just the same, of course.
Jack is a local Singaporean who has spent his entire life trying to improve sanitation around the world.
He has indeed.
Even here in a first world developing Singapore. Yeah. Cool. So look, there's an interesting, when we're filming this is, what are we in, March 2025?
I think so.
And a lot of kind of turmoil in the markets, and there's a lot of political discussion about ESG, environmental social governance, and potentially tipping into recession. Recessions generally are not good for causes and charities, and those things tend to work backwards. One of the things that I kind of discuss with my business partner a lot is clearly small businesses are impacted by wider economies, but actually they kind of sit in their own little bubble.
Yeah,
in terms of every small business can get ahead, and you know this, that it's annoying, but you see your competitors getting ahead and you go, oh, okay, well, that's my excuse gone then, because clearly somebody's doing all right in this market.
Yeah, that's a great way of saying it.
And so I wonder, do you feel like this is something that, regardless of what's going on, it's something that can not only companies should be looking at, but can help them in turbulent times?
Yeah, very quick. Absolutely, they can. However, let me just caution on that, because it turns out that the larger, to take the opposite view for a minute, the larger the company is, you get involved in things like ESG and environmental and social governance, and then you get the finance people going, oh my God, how do you, and it gets it gets very, very complex.
Yeah.
Whereas if you simply make let's say the initials, for example, ESG, what if you just said embed social good? I mean, then all of a sudden it becomes easy.
Yeah.
And much more compelling and much more inspiring.
ESG is the most horrendous.
Oh, it's an awful thing. It is an awful thing.
Well-intentioned, but put together by a committee. Okay, so supposing that we've got people here like the idea of this, they want to get involved. How, and I know you and I have been having this conversation for well over a decade on how to make it easy and simple and get involved, and you've done an incredible job of doing that and trying to match businesses with projects and ensuring that 100% of the money goes to the actual businesses, and an incredible
That's pretty rare.
audit committee that channels everything. So what's the process? If somebody wants to get involved, or if we've got board members sitting on companies and they think those companies could be getting involved, well, how do they get involved?
Very simple. It's and by the way, let me just mention that this is not necessarily for everyone as well, right? Because when you started, you were talking about, this sense of meaning and stuff like that. So first of all, we need to check that everybody's aligned and we're doing this for the right reason. And so when you visit, as I hope you will, b1g1.com, it's very simple. There's a little thing that basically says, talk to us. And that's not so that we can give you a demo or anything else. It's just to check that, the values align and all of those sorts of things. And it's very simple. And of course, every time that happens, we're finding out new things. We're seeing new examples every day of how people are embedding this good stuff in their businesses. And their businesses are growing as a result.
Sure. So I want to finish with one last idea, which is something that a mutual friend of ours, Roger, talked about probably 10 years ago. And I remember somebody saying to him, I want to do good, but I don't know what my cause is yet. Like, is it kids? Is it animals? Is it poverty? Is it? And his answer was, just go and try everything. Like, just hit something every day until you find what it is.
Very true.
And B1G1, you've got hundreds.
457 as of this morning. Yeah.
Roughly 457 projects, as I was about to say. I mean, do you kind of follow that philosophy? If somebody is struggling to find they want to have a cause, they want to get behind something, but they're maybe not feeling particularly driven yet, do you find that philosophy works?
Well, some people get hung up by that, like, what do I want to do? So the answer to that, of course, is to think about your customers, right? And think about what do you think might be valuable to them? And then when you do that and you give them options for how they interconnect with B1G1 as well, through which you can now do, then through that, you're going to find something that fits you. But I think what also can fit you, if you like, is, when I was talking with someone just before this call, and they were saying, look at that, we feel so good that we've made 12 million impacts, right, since we've been a part of B1G1. But then they added, and isn't it so good that our team members are actually doing that themselves? Does that make sense? So they're all finding, it's not just you finding it, it's actually letting your team members find it as well.
Yeah, no, I definitely, we've spoken about this in the past, but I had done various team building exercises in the days when we had offices and teams to work together, way back in those days. And we tried various things like sport, and obviously coming from a Western background, all team building involved alcohol, which didn't really work nearly as well in Asia. And it was
true.
I was really struggling with it. And then another mutual friend of ours, and he still had Plant a Tree Today, it was his charity, and so we took the team out planting trees. And while it was quite hard work to get everyone on board, it was they loved it. It was the biggest transformational thing in terms of the culture of the business, and they all wanted to do it again. And so I definitely, I think connecting with that bigger picture and a bigger wires.
Yeah, to actually experience it. I mean, here in Singapore, for example, we frequently go down to the food banks and bring people with us to the food bank so they can see exactly what happens. And when you see it, it's like, oh my God, I didn't realize it was this important. And it is this important. It really is. And so, it's a good thing to do, to be able to add. And I just want to say this too, that sometimes, just linked to what you just said, sometimes people go, what I've got to be, and all of the books talk about leading on purpose and, finding your why and all of this kind of stuff, right? The problem is that if you do it that way, or when you do it that way, you just get a selection of words or a collection of words. The trick is, and I think this is where B1G1 makes a massive difference, is it's no longer words. It's not becoming purpose-driven, it's becoming impact-driven, which means, of course, you can measure it, you can go see it, all of that kind of stuff. And so I think that's a really interesting new dimension from a leadership point of view is yes, we get purpose-driven as important, but we now get that impact-driven drives you more.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, we'll wrap that up now. Strongly encourage you to go and check out b1g1.com. You can have hours of fun picking the projects, seeing whether they can make a direct fit with what you're doing or whether it's just a fun project. I know one of your favorite projects for a long time was buying a goat for a family.
Lots of goats. Yes, goats.
But yeah,
and I used to have this thing, buy a goat on my birthday kind of thing, but now it's way too many goats. Because the age of everything. Yeah.
Terrible, taking over the world. Good problem to have. But yeah, lots and lots of different projects on there. Really interesting thing to think about. If you're an entrepreneur, can you embed it into your business? What would be the impact there? If you're a board member or an aspiring board member, is this something that you can have a conversation with founders about? That might help them with any team issues they're having or potentially help with growth. And obviously as investors, starting to think about are companies that are actively looking to make a bigger impact more investable than companies that are focused on the short term. So hopefully all of those things will give you food to thought. Definitely go and follow Paul on LinkedIn. I think you're the only Paul Dunn. You're the only Paul Dunn connected to me. Yeah, join up.
There are some Mormon ministers who share my name. Yes. So.
Thank you very much for watching. Stick any questions down below, and we'll see you soon. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Callum.